Hello and welcome to the solution video. My first custom Sudoku called Caged by a Secret Killer. I'm actually kind of recording this backwards because I just finished and released my second puzzle about a year after this one was released, and realized I should maybe record some solution videos for each. So, did the other one first, and now I'm going back to do this one, just so that way people have it available. I'm going to very quickly run through the rules. The assumption here is that you've probably at least opened the puzzle and tried it on your own first. You don't technically have to. You could just watch this if you want a demonstration of the rules. So I'm just going to brush over the rules here real quick. Read the story on your own. So we have normal Sudoku rules apply. That's 1 to 9. You need to place 1 to 9 once each in each row, column, and each of these 3x3 bold outline boxes. Cells and cages must sum to the total in the top left corner, which is normally given as a number, but you'll notice here they're letters instead. C, A, G, and E. Which obviously you can tell what I was trying to do with the theming there. They're cages. Very important is that each of these 4 letters has a unique sum. So if we determine that C is, let's say, 7, we could not have the other cages then also sum to 7. Digits cannot repeat along the positive and negative diagonals. Let's see if I can. Nice. So those 2 blue diagonal lines, if you were to say have a 1 here, you could not have a 1 up there because it's on the same diagonal. Same here if we did, say, a 3 and 3. You can kind of think of them as just another line or row or column in the grid. They're just diagonals. Cells connected by a green line must differ by at least 5. So in this case, we only have 2 digits at a time. If that was, say, a 2, this would need to be at least a 7, be 5 away from the 2. White dot cells connected by white dots must be consecutive. So if that's, let's say, a 7, that must be a 5 or a 7. Sorry, if that's a 6, that must be a 5 or 7 next to it to be consecutive. Similarly, if you had a 1, that has to be a 2. So depending on what kind of number you have on a white dot, it can be really helpful or still a little ambiguous. Lastly, inequality signs point to the smaller of 2 digits. So that's one way to word it. So you could say something like, that must be 5. Then that would have to be 1, 2, 3, 4. So that way this is the greater digit. Alright, so I have found that when watching people solve this, a lot of people tend to take a significantly more mathy approach than I really intended. Some people start working on polarity and odd and even and high and low digits and try to figure out the makeup of that. And usually what ends up happening is they do that for a while, realize that that doesn't work, and then they go about it the way I intended, which I think the result of that is people are expecting it to be more elegant than it really is, maybe. I guess that kind of depends on how you define elegant. To me, I like the way this approach works. It's just a little more kind of like pen and paper, iterating through options. That's why I have my notepad open up here. So that way, while we're working through the options, you can kind of see what I mean. So that way you don't have to do it yourself. So there's very little to go off of in terms of a start point here, other than to think about what these cage totals might be. And the way we want to start that is to recognize the quote-unquote secret that often comes up when doing these puzzles, which is that each of the rows, or columns in this case, must sum to 45. And that's because we have the digits 1 to 9 once each. And if you do that out, those sum to 45. So we can do a little bit of algebra here based on that. So we have 4 cages plus something else that must equal to 45 total. And another way we can look at that is if we were to look at this little website I use a lot, Sudoku, we can look at the way we can set up cages like this. So if we want to have a row that involves making a certain sum in 4 different ways, that has to be 9, 10, or 11. So those are the only numbers that you can make in 4 different ways. So we could say C, 9, 10, or 11. A, we're not sure yet. G, we're not sure yet. E, same kind of logic applies in the bottom row. So these could be 9, 10, or 11. So let's look at what those would look like as options. Let's start with 9. If these summed to 9 each, we would have 4 lots of that to make 36 total. We would need a 9 in the corner to finish that off and equal 45. Same down here. If it was 10, we would have 4 lots of that to make 10, 10, 10, 10, to make 40 with a 5 up here. But we can't have 5 in the diagonal. So we can actually say neither of these can actually be 10. If it was 11, then we would have 4 groups of 11 to make 44 total, we would need a 1 in the corner. So we're not sure which it is yet, but we can actually, because the whole cage having unique sum rule, we can say for sure one of these has a sum of 9, the other has a sum of 11. That also means we can take out 9 and 11 as options for the A and G cages. And that is going to be critical, because this is actually going to tell us now what these sums are. So let's forget about the top and bottom rows for now. And we can now look at the left and right columns and see, well, we have similar logic here. We have cages, but there's 3 of them. We have 3 cages with a given 4 outside of them. Same on the other side, 3 given cages with a 6 outside of them. So this time, we need a sum that must be able to be made in 3 different ways that doesn't require using a 4. Go back to our trusty list here, kind of type up some options. That could be anywhere from 7 to 13 at first glance, which is not very helpful, but we can type them at least. We know they can't be 9 or 11, just because of that cage unique sum thing. And now let's look at the options here. Well, if it was 7, we would need 1, 6, 2, 5, and 3, 4. That's not possible, because it needs a 4. We can take out 7. We look at 12 and 13, we'll see the same thing happen. Both of these would require a cage using a 4. Can't be 12 or 13 either. So it must be 8 or 10. So let's maybe look at those options. If it was 8, we would need one of them to be 1, 7. The other would be 2, 6. And the other would be 3, 5. That seems doable to me. That doesn't require using a 4. Having a 1, 7, 2, 6, and 3, 5 doesn't seem to break anything else. So, could be 8. Let's look at 10 to be safe. If it was 10, we would need one of those to be 1, 9. Let's type this over here maybe. 1, 9, 2, 8, 3, 7, and 4, 6. If we put a 1, 9 cage in the column, that would break this cell. So we could not have that be a 10 sum and also use the 1, 9. That's fine, because we can maybe use the other 3. We only need 3 of these. 2, 8 would be fine. 3, 7 would be fine, but 4, 6 would be a problem because we would need the 4. Thus, we cannot do 10 for the sum of A because you only have 2 ways to sum to 10 without it breaking things. So A cannot be 10. A must be 8. Now I'm holding off for a second to put the pencil marks in because this would be kind of messy, if not, but let's look at G now. That would be the most logical thing to do next. I will say, look at the options for G, see if you can maybe pause the video, figure out what it must be, because we're going to have a very similar thing happen here. Okay, I'm assuming that you're still watching, or then you want to see the answer, or you've already paused and you figured it out yourself. I'm just going to save us a bit of time here and say that the only option that works for G is 12. That's going to be the same kind of logic as before, where if you iterate through all of the possible pairs to make cages summing up to numbers, anything besides 12 will break the puzzle, either because it needs a 6, or because it requires a 1-9 pair that would break this. So, that, oddly enough, does actually give us all 4 sums, not just A and G. But now if we type in the pencil marks, we'll see why. So this must be 8. So one of those must be 1, 7. The only place that you could do a 1, 7, or the only one of those options that satisfies a green German whisper line is the 1, 7 pair, because 2, 6 are not 5 apart, and 3, 5 are not 5 apart. So as soon as we put the 1, 7 there, 2, 6, and 3, 5 in the other spots, 2, 6, 5, and take out some options here. That's going to both give us an 8 down here, because there's nowhere else in the row for it to go. That's a corner mark. That also tells us this is going to be a 9 up here, because the 1, 7 pair eliminates the 1 as an option. Gives us a 1 down there. And now that we know that this top row has a 9 outside of here, that means C must be 9 itself. E must be 11. Just like that. I say just like that, even though it's been almost 10 minutes, but just like that, we've worked out the 4 cage totals. And that's going to give us a ton of information to work with now. So let's pencil mark in some more stuff. On the G side, we're going to have similar apply here, that when we're making 12 in 3 different ways, only one of those works on a green line. And that's 3, 9. 3, 9 in the middle there. The others must be 4, 8, and 5, 7. We can now also fill in the top rows here. We need 1, 8, 2, 7, 3, 6, 4, 5. The only one of those that has a consecutive digit is the 4 or 5. That. Same happens down here. We're summing to 11. We need a 5-6 pair. That. Also fill in this, that having an 8 must have a 3 next to it. 5. Similar up here. This column needs to have a 2 in it. We don't have a 2 anywhere. Put a 2 there. This row is summing to 9, so we can put that with the 7. It's going to take out 7 and 5 here. So the remaining options we have are 1, 8, 2, 7. We need 3, 6. 8, 3, 6. Greater digit here must be on the left, so we can take out 1, 8, and 6 like that. 6, 3. Same applies down here. Need 2, 9, and 4, 7 still. Greater digit on the left, so we can take 2, 9, 4, 7. 7. If you haven't noticed yet, there's a lot of symmetry here. In fact, pretty much all of the puzzle is symmetrical up until the very end, where we have a clue that disambiguates the end. The way we continue now is to look at green lines in this box and this box. So maybe pause there if you hadn't looked there yet, see if you can figure out how those are helpful. So the way we want to look at it is green lines have some properties about them. We've seen, they must be 5 away, each digit on them. But additionally, that also implies 2 things. One, that we're going to alternate from low and high, back and forth. Because when you jump apart by 5, you're going from 1, 2, 3, 4, up to a 6, 7, 8, or 9. That also implies you cannot have a 5 on a green line itself, because you can't go 5 away from 5 on a green line. So that leaves the question of where does 5 go up in this box? There's only one spot for it, and that is here. So that must be the 5, 7 option there. That's going to give 4, 8 here. That's going to pretty much fill in the perimeter at this point. 2, 9, 4, 7. And then 7 fills in there. Got 5 and 3 there. Do the exact same logic down in this box. Where does 5 go? Well, it can't go in the green line. It must go here. So that's 5 and 3, 6 and 2, 8 and 1, 6 and 3. And 9 and 3 there. Missed that almost. And now we have the entire perimeter of the grid done. And this was the goal I had. It was not just to set up the puzzle to look like, oh, that's cool, there's a ring around the grid. But I also wanted it to be fully finishable before we start moving inwards. Now, you can get some other 5s in the grid. In fact, you could have done that way earlier, but I just didn't because I like to kind of solve it this way instead. So we'll just kind of move inwards now at this point. The question now is, well, the grid's pretty symmetrical, so where do we look? Well, look where there's information. So let's continue to look at these green lines now. So in this box, we need 1, 2, 5, 6, and 9. So we need 1, 2, 6, and 9. Now, those must go on to green lines in 2 different pairs of them. So whichever one has the 6 is going to have to go with the 1, because that's the only thing you can put next to a 6 on a green line. So let's kind of erase that, see where does 6 go here. 6 can actually go anywhere, 1 cannot though. So the 1 is a little more restricted. The 1 must go on that side, 6 on the other. Then we also need 2 and 9. Yes, we can't have 2 on the diagonal. So let's be 9, 2. So not the neatest looking marks yet, but once we do the same up here, we can see we need 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. We're going to have similar logic apply here. That wherever the 4 is, that has to go with the 9. The 9 is restricted to being on this side, so 4 is up there. And then we need the others to be, it was 1 and 8, I believe. My memory's terrible. Yeah, 1 and 8. 8 on the diagonal, so we have 1 and 1, 8 and 8. Now we can look at this and we can see, well, we have a diagonal. We have 1, 9 there, 1, 9 down here. So that gives us a 1, 9 pair on the diagonal, which means you cannot have a 9 here. That must be the 6 and 1, 2 and 9. Similar here, the 1, 9 diagonal means you can't have a 1 here, 4, 9, 8, 1. Double check, yep, so we're still looking good. So now the next place you'd maybe want to look is, well, let's look up in the other corner boxes that also only have 4 digits remaining. So we need 3, 4, 5, and 7. These pretty much just fill themselves in at this point. Same down here, we need 3, 5, 6, and 7. I know not everyone likes using the red conflict checker. I do, just both for my own solving, and also especially useful in a video like this where it's easy to forget things. Alright, so we're almost at the end. So I was debating how to go about this part, because this is all just classic Sudoku at this point. All the custom rules have pretty much been used. The only thing remaining is this inequality sign. That's because that is what's going to tell us the remaining order of the digits that are left. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill in the digits that are gettable at this point, just so you can kind of see from this kind of behind the scenes standpoint why that inequality sign is necessary. So this row should be fillable. We need 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, and 9. Pick out some of these options here. 8, 9. You can also look at this diagonal, 3, 7. I'm going to go through this part kind of quickly just for the sake of it, but need 2, 8 on this diagonal. That's there. That takes out 2, 8 from there, 2, 8 from there. Here we need 5, 7, and 2, 8 are in use. That's going to be a 1 and a 9, 6 and a 4, 2 and 1. And this is the main issue that kind of happened when I was setting the puzzle, which is that you could fill in this row completely, and you can fill in this box other than the 2 8s on the diagonal. Everything else is going to be in pairs at a time. So this row is needing, let's see, 5 and 6. This is needing 8. This is good practice for me, because I'm not very good at scanning rows and columns. I'm more the type to just kind of do this and just smash all the options in and just everything after. 5. This row needs a triple of 1, 3, and 7. It needs a triple of 2, 8, and 9. 2 and 8. Needs 3, 7, 9. Let's go through some of these. You see, this is kind of where the puzzle gets to at this point, if you ignore that inequality sign. And what I discovered while setting it was, whichever order the 2, 8 goes in the center, that is enough to determine everything else. But I couldn't find a way to just give you the 2 or 8 here without it being super trivial, or having it break an earlier stage of the puzzle. Like, I didn't want to just say, like, this number must be less than 5, or something like that, because that might give away information about the perimeter. So I was able to find that this inequality sign is pretty harmless up until this point in the puzzle. And you'll see this must be greater than whatever else is here. It means 1 and 2 would never be able to go on this side. That gives us an 8. This is going to fill in the entire puzzle now just from these pencil marks. Eight, 7, 1, 3, 7, 9. And boom, we're done. 1746 here. I'm very happy to see this has 11,000 solves at this point. It helps that it was featured on 2 to 3, maybe even I think 4 different YouTube channels to my knowledge. So that obviously helps quite a bit on that. But yeah, it was very good reception for a first puzzle. I was happy with that. So if you are doing this one first, highly recommend you check out the second puzzle now, which again, the video for that should already be uploaded by the time this one shows up. You do them out of order, I don't really care. Do whatever you want to do, but thematically this one, the second one is meant to be a sequel to this one. Ultimately they're just puzzles, so you can do whatever. Thank you for watching.